Hi, everyone, and welcome back to a Second Star interview. Today, I am joined by author Meg Long to discuss her new book, not book, Swift the Storm and Fierce the Flame, the second book in the Edgeworld series. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on. So
Thank you for
excited.
joining me. I know normally you live in Colorado, but right now you're in Louisiana, so I'm glad we were able to meet virtually.
You know, the pandemic was good for virtual things.
Yes. I love it. Well, for those who haven't had a chance to read Cold the Night, Fast the Wolves, and are curious about, yes, that one right there, and are curious about getting into this series, what is your non-spoiler summary of the first book and how it plays into this new one, Swift the Storm, Fierce the Flame?
Sure. So I like to pitch the first one as a sci-fi reimagining of the Iditarod sled dog race with elements of Call of the Wild, Mad Max, as if it were set on Hoth from Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's about a girl who has to learn how to trust a wolf in order to survive. They're being chased by this evil gangster, and they have to rush into the wilderness and do this sled race and try and survive like the crazy tundra world that I created that I would die in if I was there. And so the second book picks up right where the first one leaves off, but it switches narrators from Senna, who's the main character in this one, to a side character becoming the main character, Remy, in this one. Fun times with my virtual camera.
Well, that was perfect. No spoilers, and yeah, that was great.
I try and tell people, I'm like, the only spoiler I'll tell you that most people want to know anyway is like, does the wolf die? No, the wolf does not die.
Yes, that is, yeah, that's usually like our go-to spoilers, even at the bookstore. It's either does the grandparent die or does like the dog die?
No dogs. Well, there are some dogs in the first one that die, but not the main dog.
Not the main dog that we care about.
It's really a rough survival book. I'm sorry. People get traumatized by animal death on page. I try to keep it as not gruesome as possible.
Yes, when it comes to animals, yeah, let's just leave them in, happy peace and yeah, no, I agree. Well, both books feature fierce female characters. So why don't you tell us who they are and why did you want to tell their story?
Sure. So in the first book, Senna is the main character. When I was drafting this book, I didn't actually know the character's name or anything, which is unusual. I usually like to spend way more time naming people than, drafting.
Yeah.
But when I was drafting like the outline, I didn't really have a name in mind. I just knew that she had had this really rough life. Her mother's had been killed in the race that she later has to go in and be involved in, and so she was just this really gritty loner. And then when I wrote the first line of this book, which is "I'm not one to back down from a fight," she just jumped onto the page. And I know a lot of writers say that, and it sounds kind of a cliche, but it really was true. Like my book that I had wrote like before this one was like a funny, lighthearted mystery, and then Senna just became this really gritty, like grumpy character. Bad decision.
I love it. And then what about Remy? Why don't you tell us about Remy too?
Remy is like a foil for Senna in the first book. So part of Senna's journey in this book is to like open herself up to family again after losing her family. And so Remy kind of forces that on her. She's like the friend you didn't really know you wanted, but who's like, "Hi, I'm here. We're going to be friends now, even if you don't really have a say in that." So that's Remy's personality, and she's like a fan favorite. She's one of my favorites when I was drafting this book. She was my small bit of comic relief because Senna's so serious.
Yeah.
Serious, I don't know. Senna's very serious. Remy is not. She's very much like say what she wants, make light of every situation, even when they're in like life or death scenarios. And so when I wrote her book, it was a challenge because I had created this like really strong sort of personality, and I was like, what does she want? What is she doing here on this jungle planet in the new one? Like, it took me a while to kind of find that groove
Yeah.
for her.
Well, and even though comic relief Remy is I will say still a badass. I'm not gonna
She's like, she's originally her character was like the girl you want to be, the girl who can do what she wants when she wants, say what she wants, kick who's ever ass she wants. Like she's kind of that girl, but I didn't want her to be like an assassin, a train killer. I just feel like that's a little bit overdone, especially YA. And I was like, how else can she be a badass without being an assassin? Like,
Yeah.
let me find a fun way to make her very clearly a strong female character, but not kind of falling into those overused tropes. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I do love
No, but
Assassin.
I know what you mean. You want something still unique and different.
Something a
Yeah.
little fresh. So,
Well, was there anything you learned from Cold the Night that you brought into Swift the Storm? And going forward, what lessons did you take from Swift the Storm?
um, it's funny and sad. Cold the Night Festivals was literally the fastest book I've ever written. I wrote it in 3 months. I
Wow.
revised it at that time. It was like fully formed. Here I am. And the character
Yeah.
journey, I have to say, like, as even reading it again many times, I'm like, I did a really good job on this. But then Swift the Storm was like in the middle of the pandemic. It was a sequel. It was a second book. Second books are really hard for authors. People told me that. I didn't want to believe them. It's really hard. If you're an author and you're watching this, it's not just you, it's all of us. We all suffer for second books. So this book it took me more than 3 months, probably like overall 3 years to like really hash out. I think I wrote like four different, very different drafts before I
Ooh.
finally got it in a place where I could send it to my editor, who we then like
Yeah.
revised four more times, like intense revisions, not like a little bit here. It was like redo this whole thing. So, um, yeah, Remy's journey was a lot harder to nail down. And I think the biggest lesson I learned as a writer, and every book that I had tried to write after this book, I was just so worried about not really getting it that I kind of gave up a lot.
Yeah.
But I did finish another draft recently, and I realized that the main lesson I learned was like figure out who the characters are and what they want and what their journey is going to be. Because if you don't know that, the plot doesn't
No.
matter. Yeah, Remy took me for a ride.
So she wasn't very swift, even though the title says so.
She was swiftly annoying me for many years. I don't know if that made sense.
I love it.
But
Um,
I love her. I'm really proud of where this book ended up, but it was definitely a process that was very painful.
oh man, but it's good and it's worth it, definitely. So I know you kind of hinted a little earlier that the types of books you might compare it to, especially Cold the Night. But for Swift the Storm, I will say it did give me a delightful Star Wars, almost like Hunger Games vibe, but not like Hunger Games. I know that sounds
Right.
silly, but still in your own unique, fascinating way. So what was did you have a specific pitch for this one, Swift the Storm, or was it just like you had to have the sequel?
This was I saw when I sold Wolves, I sold it with the sequel in mind. And I
Okay.
basically pitched my editor, yeah, the story would continue, but from Remy's point of view. And she was like, okay, great. And that was it.
Oh, nice.
That was part of what took me so long to figure out. It's like, what is the pitch? And it was so frustrating because Wolves has such a fast pitch, like
Yeah.
sci-fi Iditarod, done. And then I was like, okay, what's the hook in this story? Should there be some sort of race or something else? And I like went back and forth for many, many drafts trying to discover it. And then I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna do what I want to do here. I just want to have a crazy jungle adventure. I want things to be fun but exciting. And I knew I wanted the different like factions fighting each other. And
Yeah.
then Remy's over here like, really want to get involved in this. This is not why I'm here. But then of course she gets roped in. So I like to tell people if Cold and I Fast the Wolves is like a frontier story, then Swift the Storm, Pierce the Flame is like a Western where the lone person
Okay.
comes to town with their like shrouded past, trying
Yeah.
to make something right in their own life. And they get pulled into this like small town fighting against a evil train corporation guy. Like that's kind of what the story is.
I
There's
love
evil
it. I
trains
really like that. A frontier, and then here we are with the Western.
in the jungle, but there's a
Yes.
train. There's no horses. There's a train.
Well, we still have like the wolf. I know that's like taking from the frontier and stuff, but we still got animals. So
It's still got lots of animals. There's lots of wilderness. There's lots of
Yeah.
evil, weird, creepy creatures and bugs and monkeys that are evil. So
It's a fun, it's almost like Jumanji as well. We'll add Jumanji in there.
that. Well, that's a Jumanji, Crazy Jungle Time.
Yeah, yeah. If you
I usually say like if you like Tomb Raider, it's kind of Tomb Raider,
yes.
but there's no teams.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like this is the type of book that has so many that can get so many fans from so many different other genres. But still, like I said, it's still your own way in such a great way,
Mhm.
you know, like sure you can compare, but I think you just use that to get people on board and then they fall in love with this series for
I
themselves.
I love that you said it. It's so nice to hear. It's, when you're writing and then even all the way up to publication, everything is just like in a silo. So you're like, I don't know how people are going to take this. Like,
Yeah, I
I
think you're
just, I,
it's great.
I always, I always like to read books that were full of adventure when I was like young. And so that was sort of, I just want this to be fun. The first one was so gritty and kind of intense emotionally. I wanted something that was a little bit lighter, but still emotionally like, you can really
Yeah.
empathize. She messed up in the past and she wants to make it right and she's trying to find her friend. Uh, It was just really kind of fun.
Yeah. Well, and the characters are real too, which is nice.
Mm.
Like you feel like you could meet these characters, on the street and they're not just like fake and I don't know.
They have personalities, and that usually takes me a few drafts. Like normally, the first draft, I'm just trying to figure out like the plot and the character stuff for the main character. And so, like a lot of times, like Emiko, she's one of my favorite side characters in this book. She's very sassy. She's a scaver. She doesn't want any nonsense. She just wants to like get rid of this evil corporation villainess.
Yeah.
And so she started out very dry because I just needed to figure out where she was and what she was doing. And then, like, as I revised, I was like, okay, now who is this person? Like, who is she? What is her life like? And then
Yeah.
I can let that personality, like, really, like, blow up and feel more real.
So do you I know you said with like going back for a second with Senna that you just kind of like had no idea exactly who she was yet and that normally you do spend time with characters. So is that your normal process then is characters first and then plot or how do you
It's different every time. Senna was very much like, I knew she was a girl. I knew she was alone. I knew she had to like learn to trust this wolf. The whole story was actually inspired by a tweet thread by an Iditarod racer, Blair Braverman. She tells the story when she's on the trail in Alaska and it's like pitch black. And there's like, she sees something running through the trees and she thinks it's like a demon and she
Yeah,
thinks she's hallucinating. And then her
right.
dogs start to like pay attention to the demon. And then you get to the end of her story and it's not a demon, it's like a person in like a running suit.
Oh,
But the whole idea of this girl running away like through the woods with her dog like from a demon, an ice demon, I was like, that's the story I want to tell. So like the story was very clear in my mind, and then it was a matter of like, who's the girl, why is she running, like
yeah.
what's she running from? And so that's where Senna sort of came from. She fit the story that I wanted to write, but then with Remy I had to find the story that fit her. Like the reverse. Very frustrating, but
Well,
fun.
oh, good. Well, I'm glad it worked out at least. So if you were to share Swift the Storm, Fierce the Flame with any author, living or gone, and you weren't worried about feedback or any of that, who would you pick to share this book with?
It's funny that you ask because like I was thinking about this question and I don't know about Swift the Storm, but I did actually like send a copy of Cold the Night Fast the Wolves to Blair Braverman. She like asked for it on Twitter one day and I was like,
Oh my God.
like I don't care if you like it, I don't care if you ever talk to me again, but please read
Yeah.
this. Like whole thing was inspired by your story, so that's really cool. So that's kind of like the one author that I wanted to read Cold the Night, and
Yeah.
so she has a copy. Maybe she read it, maybe she didn't. I don't know. It's fine. She has it. It's in her hands. As far as other authors who would want to, I'd like love to send stuff to. I just like so many, especially in the young adult world. Like everybody is so fun, and the books are so exciting now. It's like anybody. You want to read this? You want to read this? Can I read your book? Like
Yeah.
it's hard to pick just one.
And now we just need the Netflix series and we're good.
Right, fingers crossed.
Well, that is all my questions for you today, Meg. Thank you so, so much for meeting with me today. Everyone, please read this book. And if you haven't read the first one, grab it too. But there will be a link below in the video to get this copy, or not this specific copy, but a copy of the book. So make sure to order it to get today. And thank you, Meg, and take care.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.